So welcome everyone to the next webinar within the Biopharma webinar series here at LSX Leaders. My name is Adam Griffiths, Portfolio Manager here at LSX Leaders, and I'm very excited today to be joined by Merck, Eli Lilly, BenevolentAl, Portal Innovations, and Alphasense, who we are running this webinar in partnership today with. So just in one moment, I'm going to hand over to Alex Hall at Alphasense, who is going to be steering and moderating today's discussion. We are going to try and make today's webinar as interactive as possible. We do have a few polling questions built into the webinar for everybody to sort of vote, cast their decisions on. I will be launching those polling questions at various points throughout the discussion, so do keep an eye on that on your screen. If anybody has any questions at all or any comments for any of our panelists, please do make use of the Q&A function and the comment section just at the bottom of your screen. We will make an effort to get to those questions as soon as possible. So on that note, Alex, I'd love to hand over to yourself to get started with today's webinar on the use of artificial intelligence within the pharmaceutical BD process. So Alex, on that note, over to yourself.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Adam, and a pleasure to be here. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join as well. We know it's a busy conference period, so brief introduction on myself, Alex Hall. I help manage our strategic healthcare practice at Alphasense, where I predominantly support our large pharmaceutical clients with the use of data and generative AI. Now, a lot of that is also partnering with business development teams at these large organizations and helping advise on where is AI applicable, how can it help within the deal cycle, and ultimately enable and empower the human intelligence via the use of technology to work through deals faster and make confident strategic decisions within deals. So I'm also joined by the panelists today, whom I'll hand over to. So perhaps we can begin with Ivan, who is in my top right-hand corner. I'm not sure where he is for everyone else, but Ivan, over to you.
Thanks, Alex. So yes, my name's Ivan Griffin. I'm one of the co-founders of BenevolentAl, which we are an AI company working in drug discovery and development. We've got an internal pipeline of programs coming from our technology platform, most advanced, just completed phase 1 in ulcerative colitis. We also have a couple of programs at IND stage in glioblastoma and ALS. And in addition, we have 2 large pharma collaborations, one with AstraZeneca in target identification and one with Merck in small molecule discovery. Who would you like to pass over to now?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ivan. Perhaps Roby might be a natural next step as we discussed Merck.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, my name is Roby Kanichay. I'm heading the business development team for technologies at Merck KGaA in Germany. As such, I'm sort of involved in both collaborations and partnerships with companies in the AI space that help us in using and utilizing AI in the R&D process, such as BenevolentAl and also others. And also sort of spearheading an initiative within, particularly in our BD department, how we can use AI tools to help us become more efficient in the overall BD process.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Roby. So David, over to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, my name is David Linson. I work at Eli Lilly and Company, where I am the Senior Director of Operations and Intelligence for the Business Development Group overall. My main remit is to help our business development organization operationally, just keep the wheels on the bus, if you will. But the other portion of my job is to think about how we should be using AI, generative AI, for 2 reasons: to source substrate for deals, but the other portion is to help operationally figure out how to make deals go faster, smoother, and less iterations on deal cycles.
Fantastic. And of course, last but very not least, Steve.
Thanks, Alex. My name is Steve Lehmann. I'm with Portal Innovations, one of the founding team members there. Portal is an early stage venture development engine. So we focus on the very earliest stage of helping technologies transition out of universities and the core sources of innovation into startups and eventually into the hands of pharmaceutical partners, like some of my friends here today. I lead the venture team there, and as part of that, we developed a tool called Stargaze. And what Stargaze does is utilize some of the new advances in large language models and meta science in order to search for what we call innovation biomarkers. And innovation biomarkers are ways for us to be able to predict where innovation is coming from, where it's headed, and how to make relationships happen between startups, academic founders, and pharmaceutical partners.
Fantastic. So I think the course of the conversation today, we have a variety of different perspectives actually all the way through the deal cycle. So I do think it should be a very rounded discussion. And in terms of the topic, from speaking with the panelists, we decided to break this down into 4 key areas. And of course, questions from the audience, absolutely welcome. But I think the natural kind of place to start is beginning with data intelligence and strategic decision-making when we look at the beginning of the deal cycle. So when we think about AI within business development, what are the main types of artificial intelligence to the panel that you see coming up or you're asked about, or perhaps you're even using today, if you could kind of categorize them? And I can see there's also a question in the chat as well. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of engagement from the audience there in terms of what people are hoping to get out of the discussion today. But perhaps maybe David or Robbie, from your perspective, kind of leading big business development teams and also organizations that have a variety of different AI tools available to them. What are the main types of AI, perhaps within your teams, that you're utilizing today for your data intelligence?
So types of AI is, I mean, when we say AI, that's an extremely broad term and a little bit of a buzzword overall. When we think from an AI perspective, from a Lilly BD perspective, probably generative AI is probably the thing that will help us the most. And what we're talking there, when we kind of think about the business development process overall, there's 2 halves. The first half is finding the thing that we would want to partner on, and the second part is just the business development process and making that go faster. When we utilize generative AI from a find the thing perspective, there's just so much substrate out there, and trying to understand and summarize just what opportunities are out there, as well as categorize the opportunities out there. That's probably first and foremost. I'm not sure, Robbie, what you use at Merck.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that a little bit sort of maybe differently, or if I may be allowed to sort of categorize that, right? I mean, there's on the one side sort of AI or machine learning tools, even be it ChatGPT, which, by the way, Merck was one of the first companies who has their own sort of instance of ChatGPT incorporated on their firm network. So we have my ChatGPT, where we can upload sort of our own data and utilize that and query that and so on and so forth. So these are type of tools that help individual contributors to be faster and more efficient in what they need to do, right? And that could be, finding a target, or finding a or looking at a space in a certain area, doing landscaping, although that is a little bit more complicated and requires sort of an expert user. But things like, summarizing a DD report, for example, right? That is our use cases we are exploring, where large language models and AI tools that are commonly available, we are exploring to use that and sort of see where the bugs are, and to sort of get to a stage where we reproducibly use those tools in common practice. We're not there yet, but I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we're going there, or we're getting there slowly but surely. And then there is the use of AI sort of in strategic decision making, right? And if it comes to strategic decision making, then it's not just one person who does the decision, but certainly in an organization such as Merck, it's a group of people with various inputs, and a information for one person may mean something very different than the information for another person, right? So it goes beyond the information gathering into something that's feeding into a decision process. And there, the use of AI is a bit more challenging. We also have exploring ways of doing that, in clinical trial predictions softwares and drug repurposing and that sort of stuff. However, I think the road to success looks a bit more stony there, I'd say, and a bit more challenging, simply because it's many more stakeholders, and I don't think we're quite there yet for those applications. But also happy to hear from Portal Innovations or others about around their experience around that.
I can chime in here from a Portal Innovations perspective. We're thinking really about the finding the thing application that David was referencing, where we see our role at the early stages of innovation to be able to be very engaged with science at the roots, where science is happening at universities, where science is happening in research ecosystems that may not otherwise be tapped. A lot of our partners, and frankly, a lot of VC partners as well, their strategy is a walk the hall strategy, where at the end of the day, most of the stuff that's entering into their pipeline is the types of things that they found through their network or by just attending. Conferences are actually a great example of a walk the hall strategy. They work really well, but you're not going to see everything. And you're going to be focused on key geographies, West Coast, East Coast in the United States, a couple key cities in Europe. And our goal is to say innovation is happening across a number of different geographies, and that's increasingly the case post-COVID. We're on Zoom today. A lot of innovation happens between different geographies because of technologies like this. And so what we want to be able to do is map what's happening in all these geographies. And this is where we use this term innovation biomarkers to be able to search through all the literature that's feeding into these different AI engines, and not necessarily use a chat bot or something like that to be able to summarize it, but to use it to make maps and then to be able to predict the trajectories of science. And so we can see, in this geography, this particular technology might be on an upswing, and that may match with David's priorities at Lilly or Roby's at Merck, and there could be an interesting interaction to take place there. And by the way, not only is this a great area of two converging technologies of interest, but we can zero in on the top 5 early stage scientists who could be interesting to them that they might not know about yet. And walk the halls, you can do that, but you can't do it at scale. And that's the real benefit that we think machine learning tools and LLMs are bringing into the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, David, I remember in one of our earlier conversations in terms of finding the thing, and when we look at data intelligence, I think more data has been produced in the past 4 years than ever before in human history. So for business development teams, yes, as an organization, you might have one therapy area that you need to focus on or an indication that you need to get smart, and it might be newer for the organization. So for a BD team, given a mandate that, okay, this is our strategic growth area from the Exco, we need to go and we need to look across that whole ecosystem of, let's say, call it neuro, whatever it might be. There's so much data out there. How can you, maybe reduce 2,000 things that you're looking at to 200 things and make sure that those are the right 200 things, which, yes, you're a big organization, you probably have lots of resources at your disposal and probably a quite sizable team, but it's still almost humanly impossible to get through the volume of information out there in the speed at which you need to make a confident decision, not just a decision because we're talking about large investments here. How do you narrow those things down, number one? And then, how do you make sure they're the right things? So getting to the due diligence process.
So that's a great, sorry, go ahead.
No, after you, David, it would be fantastic to hear.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a fantastic question. How do you find the right thing? How do you know what the right thing is? How do you scale that? With Lilly's recent successes in several areas, our mandate is to do more, right? And we're not scalable. We can't just hire an extra 2x number of people and expect 2x output on the back end from a business development perspective. So the first and foremost, understanding your internal strategy. And I think from an intelligence perspective, we always go back to the question. I was in competitive intelligence for years, supporting our internal portfolio. And you always, from an intelligence perspective, start with the question. And so really understanding and having a clear and concise output of what your internal strategy is. What are you looking for? That's the good basis from which you can evaluate everything in the external environment. So first and foremost, I would encourage all of the people listening to go back to the drawing board, make sure that it may be clear to you and your team, but you may be very used to the vernacular that you're using. Bounce your strategy off of others within your company or with people that you have confidence in, to make sure that your strategy is confident. And then the second thing is like making sure that you have the appropriate data put together. So many teams, they utilize 5, 6, 7 different resources. And those are all disparate resources where they're having to go out to a database and search for a target or search for a disease and then pull that information together. And it's the old intelligence paradigm of aggregating multiple sources of information, deduplicating those, and that could be very labor and time intensive. So utilizing AI and machine learning resources, large language models, to combine all of those resources into one tool, if you will, or at least one view of the world, or get as close as you can. The reality of it is you can probably get to about an 80% view of the world rather quickly. That last 20% is going to take significant resources to get you there. I see Steve nodding because he knows and he deals with this on a daily basis. So just pulling that together, and then making those quick decisions. What Robbie commented on just a few minutes ago is instilling confidence in our decisions as we move forward, and ultimately that's what we're doing. We're increasing the confidence level, whether that be something that we can articulate or we can calculate, or just it's a feeling of a emotive feeling that our leadership has greater confidence in what we're doing. So number one is put together your strategy, make sure your strategy is clear and concise. Number two is making sure you have the appropriate tools and data integrated both internally and externally, and put that in such a way that you can view everything in one intuitive view, so you can instill confidence in your leadership. I hope that answered the question. Not sure if it did.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, I can talk to this a little bit almost from the other end of the telescope. We're a sort of, compared to you guys, relatively small company, about 200 people. And our platform actually works by taking in data from across all of biomedicine. So integrating that and then making inferences on top of that. What that means is we can actually work and create drug programs in any disease area. Now that's great. And you can identify, we've done it with AZ and found lots of targets for them in different diseases. But for internal purposes, the huge strategic decision is, what disease should we work on? There's almost too many. So actually there's a multitude of factors in this, clinical trial feasibility science, but competitive intelligence is a huge area of that. What's going on? What MOAs are in there? What's in the pipeline? What are the issues? Analyst updates and stuff. And the idea of almost for any company, but particularly a company like us, doing that for one disease is quite challenging. Trying to do it for many of them is impossible. So we would look to use, it's not a core competency. We don't need to build a AI platform for this ourselves. We apply our technology for drug discovery, but external providers who can help with that are a real thing to help us do that filtering of almost where to start, what to go after, because then, you're committing to that area for a while.
Absolutely. And I think there was a question in the chat. So perhaps just to summarize this piece here on data intelligence, this is kind of right from the beginning of, scoping the right space in which to then dive deeper. So, identifying the right companies, the right indication, to, of course, then invest further resources in, because if you identify the wrong space and you're working through those deals, you're in the due diligence process, you're investing all of that time in this area and perhaps neglecting all of the others where there could also be potential opportunity, but you prioritize this one space because you think that's the best space to put all of your resources. So if you get that wrong, that is obviously a big time and resource investment in something that, if you don't have the right data and actually maybe shortlist 2 or 3 on your list of indications to go into and focus time in, could have been the more appropriate place to be in. So I think the piece that we're talking about here is really where do you start, how do you identify the right space? And it sounds like the role of artificial intelligence within this aspect of a deal right from the beginning is really helping getting through the vast amount of information that's out there to determine, yes, and feel confident this is the space that we should be investing our time in, before you then go through kind of the search and evaluation process of getting your short list of companies and identifying those potential firms to then conduct due diligence on. If that's a fair summary, which does lead us nicely to, okay, so the next part of the deal, when you've found the right space, you've narrowed this down to 200 things instead of 2,000 things. What's next? So what is the next kind of aspect of information that you would look at to base the next decision on? And instead of using a tool to aggregate information and filter through that, how do you apply AI in this next phase of the deal?
Yeah, I can jump in there just a little bit. Once we find the area, we never find the company. Maybe it's the area that we want to get into. Maybe it's a specific disease, a specific target that we're going to go after. And so at Lilly, every partnership with an external, everybody that we're doing a deal with, all of us, I would say, from a large pharma perspective, we want to be the partner of choice. You hear us all say that from a BD perspective. I see Robbie grinning a little bit. Like that's all what we want to do. But what we're saying when we say that is we want to be good partners. The best deal is when both parties walk away and they feel good about it. And sometimes that's not that we walked away and we actually signed a deal. It's that we had an interaction. We were both clear about what we wanted, whether those things aligned or not, is irrelevant. If they don't align, we want to be able to get to that decision quickly and then move forward. And so, for us at Lilly, identifying who's gonna be a good partner. Are we aligned? And then the other thing is, trying to use predictive analytics, AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, to determine, does the thing that we're going after align with our business needs as well. And so we do some predictive analytics with regard to forecasting of sales. You have to think about the commercial aspect of it, although I'm a scientist by trade and training. Not all things that are scientifically interesting make money. So there is the money side of it that we have to look at forecasting and doing some of the predictive analytics. And then you have to think about deal structure. And this goes back to being the partner of choice and making sure that we're being good partners. There are 3 or 4 levers that we can pull from a BD perspective. Their upfronts, their royalties, their milestone payments, their payments on the back end, and what combination of those things are really going to be a benefit to the partner as well as a benefit to us. And so just thinking through those things, using predictive analytics, AI, to help us to decipher what combination of those things and timing of those things would be the most optimum for a particular deal, or even within an area of a specific area of interest, whether it be disease or target or whatnot. We'd be interested to hear what the other panelists would say there.
And Robbie, I think this might lead us quite nicely to yourself. So building on what David has mentioned and looking at predictive analytics, and there's also a couple of questions in the chat here. When we're thinking about predictive analytics, I'm not sure if anyone has a perspective on this, but do you often look for kind of off-the-shelf products to help with that predictive analytics, or is it that as organizations, so perhaps all of you can kind of speak through this, would you prefer to build a custom tool or maybe refine something that's already existing to ensure that, you know, that analytics, this model is kind of working in line with the needs of your organization and potential partners? I'm not sure if you have a preference on, you know, what you'd look at there versus, you know, buy versus build or inputs.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking for Merck, I think it sort of depends on the stage of where you are in the process, right? The further you are in the process, I think the more there is a desire and need to have something custom built. And I mean that in a way that allows us, the organization, to engage with that model to gain that confidence, right? It's one thing that, you know, an algorithm tells you, okay, this is a whatever 500 million peak sales product. Fine, that's an algorithm that tells you that, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that the head of sales or the head of the franchise has confidence in that prediction. So, and therefore, then there needs to be a model that allows folks to engage with that number on a more granular level. You know, what are the assumptions that went to it and all that sort of stuff that sort of makes the whole thing explainable and therefore builds confidence in that prediction. So I think from that perspective, I think there is certainly a place for predictive tools, but again, you know, it's not a one size fits all, and it really depends on the phase in which this project is, right? And I think that's the same with sort of landscapes, for example, right? I mean, when one starts off, you know, okay, this is an area that we strategically want to invest in, let's do a landscape. Surely AI tools and you know, the certain databases and so on are very helpful to give you a first picture and understanding and drive some insights. But then it's very important for folks to engage with that, understand what's on that radar plot or whatever it might be in detail, to then derive the appropriate strategic insights, you know, for that R&D organization, for that commercial strategy, whatever it might be. So you know, I think it's always oftentimes a good starting point, that then relatively, as soon as it gets more concrete, the more sort of manual labor, if you want to call it that way, is really important to sort of build confidence around that. And you know, this might change with us becoming more acquainted with the outputs that such tools give us, and us naturally building a higher confidence of that and understanding what the limitations are. And that sort of attitudes might change, but that's certainly where we are at the moment, at least at Merck.
Absolutely. And in terms of the predictive piece, so I think that also leads quite nicely into looking at risk assessments, because I'm sure that actually when you're looking at incorporating AI, you know, within deals as well, you need to understand the underlying technology in order to feel confident that, yes, if we're going to use this predictive analysis, we can base our decisions off of this information. So it's really understanding what's the tech that sits behind that and ensuring that that is in line with, you know, how you would come to decisions. But then also, as you think about feeling confident as you're working through a deal and looking at, you know, maybe the use of AI removing risk from your deals, perhaps that is, you know, how can AI flag information that as a team we just wouldn't have been aware of, or we wouldn't have been able to catch without a smart technology to do that for us. As a panel, how would you see, you know, AI as a, you know, an application to help perhaps remove risk from deals? So maybe looking at the other side of this on predictive analysis. And I'm not sure if that's actually something that maybe anyone is using today. So maybe first question, are you using AI to help remove risk from your deals? And if so, how?
I can give my 2 pennies worth from a sort of more startup perspective. I'd say, I think a lot of the deal itself process is a lot of, you know, people, relationships, science and stuff. So there's a lot of things that go into a deal that often can't really be automated away. I see a big role in the sort of intelligence gathering and knowing what's going on. And if that could be a risk, and there's just stuff that you're not aware of that can be presented to you in a way that is easy and actionable, that's probably a way it can be done. And then almost it's less risk, but it's more getting a deal done, you know, arm wrestles over valuation, what have you. So comps analysis, particularly in new fields, you know, as fields get established, then the peer evaluations and the comparative things become easier. But in an emerging field, it's often, you know, the disconnect is, you know, it's always things. So actually it's more from a pure having the data or being able to see a path through that data can just make things less likely to go wrong. That's the way I sort of think about it. But I'm interested in how the others view it.
And I'll add on to that what Ivan said. It's having all the data, but making it consumable. So leadership and everybody in the room can look at it and can understand it in an intuitive way. For those of us who are kind of data scientists by training, we live by spreadsheets, and we can consume spreadsheets very easily and just pull that information together and parse it in different ways. Putting that in front of a leadership board to make a decision or to consume it, you know, the way I kind of think about it, when we get the information into the leadership's hand, and I put a slide together or a dashboard or whatnot, I want them to be able to intuitively consume that information in 30 seconds or less, right? Obviously, they want to go into a deeper dive, but you know, kind of what Ivan said, putting all the information together is step one, and it's not a small thing. It's a rather large thing depending on the data set that you're working at together. And the second part of it is putting it into a consumable format, which Gen AI can help us do in some aspects. Like we've said multiple times in this call, there's been a increase in information that's just incredible in the last 3 or 4 years.
And do you find that, you know, due to obviously the buzz around AI, and as we know, it is a very broad term, but when you're building, you know, your commercial assessments and business cases to go to the senior leadership teams, do you find that the expectation now is more so, you know, the teams are expected to use artificial intelligence or generative AI to make that information more consumable, referenceable? Are you receiving, you know, more questions maybe back from senior leadership teams because they expect, you know, BD to be using tools to enable you to provide more information with a faster turnaround time? What does that kind of look like when you're, you know, working through those commercial assessments and actually coming to the decisions on partner selection?
Yeah, I'm hoping Robbie chimes in here as well. We're just in the beginning of this. Like, we are just now developing these tools so that we can make our jobs easier. And like I said at the beginning of the hour, you know, our whole goal is to automate the portions that can be automated, so our people can focus on the parts that can't be automated. And so, you know, future state, our goal would be, you know, that we can have a tool that would help us say, okay, of these 4 or 5 different levers that you can pull on this deal, if you pull this lever, what does that do with the overall deal structure? And then can you predict the probability of execution of the deal, right? Mm-hmm. Can you predict what does that look like from a commercial outlay later for the job? But, you know, garbage in, garbage out. We only have so much information. We're trying to be as predictive as we can be, but we don't have a crystal ball, and we can't predict the future. So we're just trying to be as directionally correct as we can be. But again, we're just on the very front end of putting generative AI, machine learning tools into the business development process. So, Robbie, I'd love to hear what you have to say there, and we haven't heard much from Steve, so would love to hear from a venture perspective what Steve has to say on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can only concur with you what you said, David. Right? I mean, we're still in the beginning of exploring what these tools can bring for us. I think as I mentioned in the beginning, I think the first step, or the lower hanging fruits are, using these tools to improve individual productivity. And then, once there's confidence around that and that works well, then I think, there's overall a higher confidence of, then using those tools also, to drive joint decision making. As I mentioned, for example, with the predictive forecasting and so on and so forth, right? I mean, it's a useful tool in the beginning, right? But in the end, to gain confidence, what the senior management wants to see is that everybody around the table has confidence in the forecast, and you only get that by a visceral engagement of the methodology and the numbers, and AI only gets you that far in that process. But before I hand it over to Steve, maybe Alex, I'm not quite sure whether we got the gist of your question, because you mentioned something around identifying risks or risk mitigation using AI. Do you have maybe an example? And I don't want to put you on the spot. If you don't have one, that's also fine. But just trying to see whether we addressing the question in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I think about risk within deals, and this is something that we kind of support, clients on, they come to us and say, well, our main challenge is last year we made a bad acquisition or a bad deal that didn't end up generating the revenue that we anticipated for the business, and now we're in recovery mode. So one bad deal based on bad information, or it doesn't necessarily have to be bad information, it can just be lack of information, something was missed, can have a knock-on effect to the business, and therefore the whole strategy of the organization has to pivot to make up for that loss. So when I think about risk, it's what is the implication of perhaps missing information in the due diligence process, and how do you mitigate against that happening? I know it's almost kind of impossible to make sure you have access to absolutely everything, but how are you perhaps using artificial intelligence to ensure that that doesn't happen, would probably be my question. So maybe Robbie and David, and I know Ivan as well from the other side, how are you using AI to ensure that you're not missing an opportunity, or you're not making perhaps a bad decision because you've missed something? So removing that risk in the partner selection. Did that help clarify, Robbie?
Yeah, maybe we give Steve a chance to contribute if you want to, Steve.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so as I'm thinking about that, Alex, I'm thinking about the difference between known unknowns and unknown unknowns, frankly. And to just having a tool that can help you explore the known unknowns in a deal. And those are usually pretty similar across different deal types. Depending on what stage you're at, the known unknowns are going to be static, but they're still unknown. And so you need a tool to help you explore those. But then even bigger, what are the unknown unknowns, so that you don't get into the scenario that you're describing, where you've got stuff on your face because you missed some key piece of information, and you didn't know where it was. But are there tools that can help you get to that really quickly? As I'm thinking about the conversation we've been having, I think the three themes that are coming out from me are, first, like Robbie, you've been talking about transparency is critical. And so, having an AI tool that just gives you the answer is not valuable at all, even if the answer is right. And it probably isn't. It's probably not right. It probably needs some finessing and some expertise to help shape it. No matter what the case is, it needs to be transparent and explainable to leadership. And then to David's point, that needs to be very easily, intuitively communicated. That 30-second, here's what we found and here's what it means. AI can actually do that. And I feel like that's this transition now, even on the technical side of machine learning tools, is the move from black box models to explainable models. And that could be a really great metaphor for how we think about these AI tools in pharma BD, moving from a black box where you type in and it gives you, a response, and it could be hallucinating. Mm-hmm. You don't know, to show me your work. Show me how this model actually developed the solution it needed, or that I was asking it for. And then again, to Robbie's point, let me collaborate with it and shape the output and actually explore and work with it, especially at the later stage parts of the deal. I want something that's not generic, but that's fine-tuned for my use case that I can collaborate with and I can see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be a venture investor before we started Benevolent. And if I look back, and I think anecdotally from talking to other people, there's not that many deals where you just miss a glaring thing. And you do the diligence that's appropriate for the stage you are, but I can think of very few that I know of, even when there was a gaping hole. You do get a bit of what the Americans call the Monday morning quarterback, where, oh, obviously this shouldn't have been done because of this, with new information. I mean, and one of the bigger risks for a smaller company engaging with a pharma is often it's a change of strategic direction that the pharma may take. So you license a program in a therapy area that then, because there's a failure elsewhere or something, or change of leadership, that happens. And I'm just not sure how much you can really, that probably is a large percentage of the way deals go wrong. I'm just not sure how much you can really predict probability of change of strategic direction, unless maybe the people who work in pharma say it's a high probability always, but it's, I think things like that are hard to boil down to a percentage or a number.
And Ivan, I'll kind of add on to that. You know, I think there's two portions of the deal that are success, that help determine the success, right? Did we execute the deal on the right thing? So, and to your point, there's probably not a lot of just, you know, we did deals that we knew we had the information at the time and we knew we shouldn't have made the deal, but then we made the deal anyway, right? That type of situation. And there are things that pop up. But as I think about business development, especially at Lilly and some of the deals we've done in the past, it's not always intuitive where the value comes from. And so, you know, it's the execution of the deal after the deal, the integration of the acquisition, the alliance management portions that really create the value for the most part. Once you sign the piece of paper, that portion of it is done, and whether you've put the correct verbiage in the contract or not. I mean, there are portions that we need to make sure that we're doing that correctly. But I see at times where I see deals that didn't come to the valuation or didn't provide the value to the organization that did the deal. And in large pharma, since we do so many deals, if we have one that doesn't go so well, we have so many others that do go well. And that's part of the nice thing about being large pharma. It'll impact a smaller pharma or biotech a lot, you know, one bad deal or one maybe not as value added deal can have a greater impact. The thing that we've been focusing on increasingly at Lilly is as we think about the alliance or the integration portion, making sure we get that right, and utilizing AI in areas that help us to do that well. And that can be as simple as contract, you know, generative AI contract management, where we come in and you can have a tool that you can start, you know, instead of, you know, reading through 200 pages and becoming an expert in the 200 pages from a contract, that you can have a tool that you can ask it a question, chat GPT like, and pull out information that you can compare contracts that you've done to pull information out. You know, alliance manager is much like a marriage counselor. You don't think of all the things that will come up until after the marriage is in and you're 6 months into it and you're realizing maybe we're not as compatible as we thought we were. And so a good alliance manager, a good integration manager will come in and think about how to manage those kind of sticky situations and still create value for both organizations. And that's one thing we are working on at Lilly significantly, is trying to figure out how to use generative AI to be more predictive of those issues that we're going to have in alliance management or integration management, so we can make sure that we're creating value for both organizations. Robbie, I see you're off mute. I'm sure you have something to say here.
No, I mean, yeah, very much agree, right? I mean, there's lots of tools that, you know, you can use in that context, which are, you know, which are not quite AI, but sort of just make you more efficient around, you know, adhering to certain deadlines, knowing when certain decisions need to be made according to the contract, and then, you know, alerting the organization towards that, and so on and so forth. So that's not an AI tool, right? But it's sort of having that information digitized at your fingertips, and having alerts around that is something that can make particularly the management of contracts, much more efficient. And so, you don't get triggered by an email by your partner saying, well, by the way, according to the contract, we should have decided on the last whatever target for that project 3 months ago. So we'd like to have a decision by next week, right? So, these sort of things, that's not really AI, but certainly a place of digitization and, within contract management.
Absolutely. I think in some of our earlier conversations as well, we spoke about kind of how AI can help build repeatable processes that, probably a very smart business development team, they shouldn't be doing those manual things. They should be repurposing that time to more meaningful analysis. So when we look at those, repeatable processes and perhaps how AI is helping build those within your BD strategy, maybe Roby, David, what are some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of this is a process we know comes up every single time within our deal cycle? How are you thinking about using AI either to automate those repeatable processes or indeed kind of build them?
Maybe I make a start. So, one of the things that we are really active use cases that we're pursuing is writing of due diligence reports, right? Particularly for larger transactions, there's up to 50, if not even maybe more people involved in doing due diligence and writing reports and so on and so forth, and compiling those to a concise document that is sort of digestible by senior management and sort of pithy is actually almost an art by itself. And this is where large language models can be of real help and really speed up the process and also highlight certain areas where there are gaps and so on and so forth, right? So that is something that we're exploring. We're not quite there yet, but certainly something that I have actually confidence in that it will get there in the foreseeable future to have something like that more or less automated. Maybe
and I would say even a more simple one would be CDAs, right? We have a lot of that templated, but the ones that take us the most time are the ones where our partner doesn't want to agree to our standard Lilly templated CDA. So if we can employ, and we haven't done this yet, but if we can employ a generative AI capability to just execute CDAs, the number of CDAs that we execute in a year is just ridiculous, to be honest with you. We just have so many of them. So, that would be, even if you saved an hour times, say you did 1,000 of them in a year, you just saved a half of an FTE that you could be having doing something else.
Fantastic. And keeping an eye on time. So perhaps to summarize what we've discussed so far, maybe some of the types of AI that we've spoken about and the stages of the deal cycle where they're most applicable. So we began with data intelligence and strategic decision making. And I think we determined that within that part of the process, when you're identifying the right thing, the importance of AI is really in aggregating the vast volume of information that's out there and pointing you in the direction of, like, yes, you've looked through 100% of the information that is available, and this is how you can narrow that down to identify the right thing. So one, helping teams cut through the vast amount in an efficient way, that's out there. And that could be using a machine learning model that has natural language processing, capturing, language variations to ensure that because we have so many ways to say the same thing, you're not missing that due to, human error. Technology can kind of take that on for you. The next piece we discussed was, removing potential risk in a deal. That could look like, knowing what you don't know, or the things that you do already know, removing, risk within that. Maybe having a monitoring tool. That could be, I think, Roby, you mentioned, ensuring that the team has smart alerts set up. And that could be an AI tool that is doing that monitoring for you in the background to ensure that as you're working through the due diligence process, you're building your commercial assessments, that if there is something you need to be aware of, the team's time is not spent on research, but more so they're just notified immediately of anything they should be aware of. So you feel like you have that confidence in the background that a tool is kind of doing that for you. Then there is, actually building the repeatable processes. So that could be a large language model that either is built in-house, or it could be developed with a partner, or it could even be bought externally, but you need to understand the underlying technology behind that model to have confidence in a sense that, right, if I plug in, a question because this has been asked, or I'm putting this into a deck, that I know what the output of that summarized answer is based on. Therefore, I can include it in my commercial assessment. So looking at maybe verticalized large language models, and Robbie mentioned Merck was one of the first to adopt, ChatGPT internally. So how can you train that to ensure that when you ask that a question, BD can actually use that information, and you can feel confident that you know where that comes from. You can verify, the original source of that information. The next piece, I think, is probably the final question perhaps that we can cover. What are the kind of barriers to entry of utilizing AI internally? What are some of the biggest challenges in integrating AI into the BD process? And I guess that could look like, is it data security and privacy, or is it existing systems that are already in place? And I think existing systems can be both hearts and minds. So people have set ways of doing things because they've been doing them for a very long time. Or it could be, technology that's already in place, but actually it's just in place because also it's incumbent and it's been there. It's not really doing what you need it to. It's just kind of sat there. So therefore the team is doing manual processes anyway. Could also be a lack of understanding of AI capabilities, either within the team or more broadly, and lack of scalability perhaps. So I'm not sure if those are anyone has a perspective on what maybe the biggest challenge of integrating AI in your processes.
Yeah, I can chime in here a little bit, and Steve mentioned this earlier. First and foremost, AI is kind of a black box to people. Most people think that it's just this thing that's going to solve your problems, and you can just ask AI any question. And so, just a little bit of education internally within your groups, and having good partners that can do that as well, is to kind of demystifying how you're using AI, what you expect to get out of it. It isn't always the answer. Directionally correct is the term I often use with AI, and it points us in the right direction. The other things that hold us back, quite honestly, is the data that we're using. The data that we're using is often just dirty, especially if it's internal data. It's 5 IT systems ago that's been merged together from a BD perspective, and it's the CRM that you use for your BD process, and it just needs to be cleaned up, and you're trying to aggregate that. And I saw a question in the chat of like, how do you deal with multiple inputs? These are not sexy things that we want to spend a lot of our time on, getting the information together, but they're the necessary things to build the foundation for decision making, or for at least appropriate analysis. So no matter what tools you're using, you have to have a roadmap to actually merge these data and clean the data. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. As we go into Bio International, which we just came from, a lot of information from that partnering system is user input, and like individual companies input their company's information. It's just dirty data. So trying to figure out how to get your data clean, get your data aggregated, and then being able to clearly explain, I think, are the kind of the barriers there. Robbie or Ivan or Steve, comments, please.
I would agree wholeheartedly, and it's beyond just BD. A lot of the things we're talking about here, we use AI models to predict things to scientists, and naturally skeptical, inquisitive group of individuals like we all are. And so it's like, I don't want to be told this target's great. Tell me why, show me the chain of evidence. And it's all, I couldn't agree more with what David said around the sort of under the hood data integration effort. It's not the glamorous thing people talk about, but if you haven't got all that right, you're sort of building on quicksand. So that is I think most people massively underestimate the amount of time on any task data integration takes, and it's just hard to scale in most domains. Maybe within very specific use cases you can, but it's a real challenge.
I would just riff really quickly off of David's comment at the very beginning of our conversation, which was always start with the question. And different AIs, I'll use AIs plural. You're going to use different types of AIs with different levels of black box or openness, depending on what the question is, whether that's finding a binding pocket for a small molecule, closing a CDA, or finding under the radar innovation. And often, you're not going to be looking just, all right, let's put HAL 2000 into a room and it's going to solve all of our problems. Just the Eli Lilly BD AI. It's going to be a bunch of different AIs that have fine-tuned use cases for specific questions. Being question directed is the critical piece.
Couldn't agree more. It was deep learning, then it was, now it's generative AI, then there'll be the next one, and it's what problem are you trying to solve? If you start there, then better outcomes will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think perhaps to bring us home nicely, then I think we've all concluded that it is the importance of the underlying data as well on which you base those decisions. So whether that is external and it's also coming internally, whether that's also from notes taken at conferences and those kind of inputs, it could also be other parts of the organization that are having conversations with KOLs, or it could be, more from through an R&D lens, but actually the business development team really needs to get smart on this, new indication over here, and we need that kind of information. How do we share that, bring that into the team, but also ensure, that it's accurate and we're able to have some kind of search and discovery on top of that external and internal information to essentially make sure that we have repeatable processes and access to that data, but we're not relying on artificial intelligence to give us the answers. We're applying our human intelligence and using AI to get us to that information faster, feeling confident we haven't missed anything, but we're coming to the conclusions ourselves instead of using a generative AI tool to come to the conclusion for us, and then we base our decisions off of that. And just want to say thank you to everyone for the input in the discussion, also to the audience for all of the questions. We'll just have a final check to ensure we kind of haven't missed anything. Then there is one final question, which I think we have maybe 60 seconds to answer before we wrap up. Just want to ensure we do support the audience with that. So how do the panelists see pharma and biotech companies using AI tools to generate new insights to guide BD deal valuation structures and product pricing? I think perhaps we have covered that within this discussion. I don't know if anyone had any final thoughts on that question before we wrap up. Okay, fantastic. And I am sure that all of the panelists, if people do have follow-up questions, our details are within the LinkedIn groups of LSX. So I'm sure we'll be more than happy to have discussions, share insight on anything that we didn't have time to cover today. But again, big thank you. And I'm not sure if there are any closing remarks from Adam from LSX.
Thanks so much, Alex. And thank you, Steve, Roby, David, and Ivan also for taking part today. Also to all of our audience members who have joined us also virtually. A recording will be sent to everybody who signed up today, automatically to everybody's emails. But once again, thank you for joining for today, and see you next time within our Biopharma webinar series.